And next in new books for fall 2016, this is history. I've got about maybe 5 or 6 here. I'm not in order, not in historical or chronological order. The Bolsheviks by Adam Ulam, Intellectual and Personal and Political History of the Triumph of Communism in Russia. I think it's worth studying. It's worth studying the rise of fascism and socialism in Europe and communism in Russia. So this will fit right nicely into the few books I have on Russia. And I do also want to get to the Gulag Archipelago, which I guess won Solzhenitsyn some kind of Nobel Prize in Literature way back when. But it's not often read today because apparently it's horrifying, but probably worth reading. It's one of those things that you'll never be the same again, and you can't undo what you read. But I guess I'm not one of those people that in life that want to. I'm not one of those ignorance is bliss. I'd rather have the steak than the red pill or blue pill. I always mix them up, but whatever one it is. The steak reference is The Matrix, right? Okay, another book, The Archaeology of Greece by William Biers. This is actually nice. It has all kinds of tons of pictures in here about old coins, and I just thought this would be great when I study Greece. Right now, I'm actually halfway through H.G. Wells. You may know that he wrote sci-fi, but he also wrote a 2-volume history called The Outline of History, and it extends from the beginning of time, really, and life on Earth, early life on Earth, all the way to World War II. And so right now I'm in Greece. I'm near the end of Greece. He's talking a bit about Macedonia and the rise of Alexander the Great. He actually says that Alexander's father was important and is not studied, not given the respect he should be. He was Philip of Macedonia, and his conquests and his rise of leading the rise of Macedonia perhaps provided the space for his son to do all those conquests, because for a time Macedonia became quite powerful and was considered by Greece as another Greek city-state and a powerful one. And parts of Greece actually were more favorable to Persia, if you can believe that. Just a generation before that, this is the middle of the 300s BC, just a generation before that is where the Greeks fought the Persians, so at Marathon and etc. But a generation after that, so the Greeks won those battles. Some of them they lost, certainly. We forget the ones they lost, but they did win some of the decisive ones, I guess, especially the sea battle. But then a generation after that, Macedonia rose with Philip of Macedon, and then he was going to invade Asia, I think, Asia Minor. So he was going to go into Thessaly and down into down east and then down into Asia Minor, and he was killed. He was assassinated. I don't know. He was visiting some ceremony or something, and someone stabbed him. So one of his bodyguards, and they stabbed him, and that was that. And then his son took over at 20 or something. He was age 20. So, anyways, it's been really interesting. And so of course, I'm interested in adding. I've got lots of books on Greece. I actually have a separate. I put a floating shelf in the wall just for my books on ancient Greece. So I've probably got about 10 or so. But this is nice because it has all kinds of pictures and drawings of frescoes and architecture and whatever, so statues. And so this is great. This will add to learning more about ancient Greece and not losing knowledge, which I think we are today, when that stuff goes unstudied. All right, more books on history. So here's Lost Histories. This is by Joel Levy. This book is about strange myths and stuff that we kind of don't know what happened with. So it talks about the Holy Grail, and it talks about the lost works of Aristotle. It also mentioned El Dorado. Was there ever a city of El Dorado? It makes me think of Atlantis. but also talk about Shakespeare, lost works of Shakespeare. Will we ever find the resting place of Genghis Khan? And so anyways, I thought that might be interesting. Lost histories. Okay, a few books on the United States. A Nation Divided. The Civil War Before and After. This is just a tiny little pocket paperback on some of the American history stuff. Here's one of the books by Tom Woods. So I got this one from the Mises Institute sale. And a whole bunch of stuff was 50% off. A Politically Incorrect Guide to American History by Tom Woods. And Tom Woods runs it's a decent podcast, and he posts almost every day, interviews various people, but he's part of the libertarian movement. But there's all kinds of these politically incorrect books. There's a politically incorrect guide to, I wonder if they list them somewhere. There's one about I think the Federal Reserve, and there's one in I can't think of the list now. I wish there was a list on the back here or something, but there's a whole bunch of these politically incorrect guide to books, and he's got this one on history. So this should be great. And when I actually get around to studying American history, I'll look into that at the same time. When I read about a topic, I like to read about 3 or 4 books at a time. So when I was doing the Civilization series, which I guess I never posted that, did I? I was recording videos about reading on various topics on early man and then early civilizations, and I just have never made them public because I've never really been happy with them because the quality isn't that great. Just me reading stuff and looking at, pulling up different books to read about different stuff. But because what I was doing is I was using about 5 or 6 different sources, and that talks about like early man, for example, the discovery of fire and things like that. And then early civilizations, which of course is ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia and Babylon and things like that, or Samaria, and then later Babylon and Assyria and things like that. And I had read a whole bunch of books up to Samaria and ancient Egypt, and then with the H.G. Wells book, I kept going. But that's been a goal of mine. I just haven't gotten around to finishing it because I think that stuff, like I said, I think people have lost perspective or just don't even know about those things. All right, here's a book on Canadian history, which I thought looked good. The Path of Destiny, Canada from the British Conquest to Home Rule. And this is 1763 to 1850. So just before Canada became the Dominion of Canada. Before that, it was Upper and Lower, and Canada East and Canada West and stuff like that. But eventually it became the Dominion of Canada, then we got our own country. So this is just a bit before that, by Thomas Raddall. I haven't studied much Canadian history because I don't think it's as important. Canada does not have a prestigious revolution like the United States did. We don't even really have a revolution like France did. There was a war that happened a bit prior to the making this a nation, called the Great Rebellion, but it was pushed down and it was defeated. Unlike the American Revolution wasn't defeated. We forget that North America was largely British for a long time, and up here in Canada was actually largely French. But it was sold off by France when they, I guess, wanted to exit the New World. And then the Brits started ruling it, and the Brits had to put up with the Quebec people that were already here. But anyways, I don't think that stuff's as significant as the United States. And it wasn't that violent revolution, as much as it maybe wasn't necessary or wasn't necessary, but it certainly bred a tradition and a history that makes American people very different than the rest of the world. Canada has no such history. Okay, the last one, which is just excellent, is called New Worlds, and it's a big book and has inside of it old maps. If you may have seen maps that have of like land masses that have sea serpents and stuff in them. So I'll show you this one, just in the front here. if you've seen old maps like this that have sea monsters and stuff in the ocean, that's the kind of stuff in here. But it also has maps about, really old maps about Europe. At the time, they thought that various places in Germany and like Mecklenburg and etc. All these different places in Germany and France, and they thought that they were just connected like circles. Maybe I'll find the map, but they had these strange views about how the Earth might look like, and so it's kind of neat looking at the early maps they drew. You probably know that some of the early maps drawn of North America had California. You know that piece off of California? They had that as an island. They had that separated. So anyways, there's a lot of neat stuff in here. Old maps from where does it start? The 1400s, I think? Let's see. The late 1400s starts with maps. And then it ends with mid-19th century maps of India and stuff, Gulf of Mexico. So anyways, I thought that was really neat to look at some of those old maps, and not only just old territory maps, like Spain owned most of Central America. Not only maps like that, but also just how they envisioned from their very and sometimes anecdotal explanations by explorers, how the cartographers at the time came up with, okay, how is this going to look? Does this make sense? Based on just explorers. And you might know of Herodotus, who was a famous ancient Greek explorer, that his histories is based on a lot of anecdotes and a lot of what just random people thought, and he recorded it as if it was the case. At least that was what they knew, even though it was fairly unreliable. But that kind of thing was also happening in the New World era, where people would go over there and then come back, and people were, of course, always interested from the homeland, the old world. They want to know, well, what's over in the new world, and they would describe it best they could, and then generate these maps. Because, of course, we remember, of course, Christopher Columbus didn't think he'd be bumping into a new continent. He thought he would be finding a quicker way to India, because he didn't want to have to go the Marco Polo route. He wanted to sail a boat on the west side. So, and I'm not sure if anything in there will be about flat Earth stuff, and it might be. I'm not sure when the flat Earth stuff kind of got taken out of as common beliefs of people. But all right, that's it for history. Next will be philosophy.